alarm.
Okay, I think we are up. So thanks for joining us, everyone. So many of you know that we are at BridgeWay Church trying to be proactive in this bizarre and crazy time that we find ourselves into, to present and put together a whole bunch of resources for you for areas of our lives that we might need help in. And so today, I'm very excited. We have Portia Coops and Ashley Roberts with us.
Hello.
Today we are going to talk about school and homeschooling and virtual learning and some of the challenges that we're kind of collectively trying to address here. And so Portia, I'll let them introduce themselves in a moment. Well, why don't you do this, ladies? Why don't you say who you are, and then we'll kind of set up and preface our conversation before we jump in.
Okay, sure. Okay, I'm Portia Coops. I have 4 kids. They are going to be a 10th grade, a 9th grader, a 6th grader, and a 4th grader. I have homeschooled my kids I've been homeschooling 10 years. And then also we put kids in the 4th grade into public school. So I have children both places. This year, all 4 of mine will be in public school.
Cool. I'm Ashley Roberts, and I have 3 baby girls. Oh, I have 3 kids, 2 girls and a boy. I've got a 6th grader, a 2nd grader, and an almost 2-year-old. So that makes our classroom extra fun this year. I homeschool all my kiddos, but we do have someone in our home who is a 13-year-old. She's going to be an 8th grader, and she'll be doing the virtual learning this year. So we're going to be navigating all of that together.
Yeah, well, and tell us, so BridgeWay, how did you come to BridgeWay, both of you? Ash, I know you've come more recently. Portia, you've been around for a little longer. How did you find BridgeWay, just for those of us who maybe haven't met you yet?
Oh, well, we moved to the area, and we were actually looking for a church that was close to our home, and BridgeWay was, and so we started coming, and it was just a great fit from the beginning. So that's been 5 years. We've been here 5 years.
And David, your husband is an elder, so he serves our church as well. So David, we love you. I love you. You're the most amazing ever. So yeah.
Actually, it's all about David. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all, yeah, like, hey.
All about David today. So yeah, I guess our family has been going to BridgeWay for almost 3 years. It'll be 3 years in December. We lived for about 5 years in Zambia, Africa.
And I was born
My Selah. So if you want to know what homeschool really is about, I've got my children on the other side of the camera doing math work. So that was Selah piping in that she was born in Africa. The reality of homeschool. But yeah, we got here about 3 years ago, and we were also looking for proximity, closeness to where we were living at, and we were looking for a small church community, one that was really tight-knit and just really was focused on community and then serving the community around us. And we found that in BridgeWay. We started going and just never left.
Awesome. Well, okay, so I want to jump into this conversation, but the thought occurs to me that we need to qualify our discussion here today. I'm almost like I'm seeing the emails being written. So I want to address some of maybe the questions or some of the maybe some of the challenges with having a conversation like this. Because first of all, we want to recognize that, especially right now, more than ever, there are different ways of approaching schooling, right? You've got folks who are homeschooling, you've got folks who are doing virtual learning, and then you've got folks who are going to be sending their kids back to school, and then there's probably a hybrid of all those things. And so a couple of things, and this is more for me, so let me talk to our audience for a second. So BridgeWay, I will just tell you that at BridgeWay, we do not advocate that there's one right way to do schooling, theologically or otherwise. And so I want to make sure that you all know that we're here to present some resources that we have. We understand that this conversation is not going to address every question. It's certainly not going to address every circumstance, because we know that each family is different. And so it could be, we could be talking to stay-at-home moms. We could be talking about single parent households. We could talk about stay-at-home dads. And so we know that all of these things are different. And so we're not trying to make any assumptions here. We're trying to do our best to present some content and some resources that will hopefully be helpful. And on a personal level, I just would say that I've experienced all three of the forms of education that we're going to mention today. So I've been homeschooled. I was homeschooled for a while. I went to private Christian school for a while. And then I spent the latter half of my scholastic education in public school. And so I really have experienced a lot of the blessings of all of those things. I really do think that each has positives and negatives. And so I just want to make sure, and if you guys want to jump in and qualify anything else as well, feel free. But I think it's important that we're not presenting this as the right way to do it. We know that there's going to be challenges, and just give us grace, because we can't possibly anticipate every situation. And so please just let that yeah. Anything you ladies want to say before we start maybe jumping into some content here?
I think you covered it pretty well there, Kyle.
Okay. So and again, our big goal is that you can take away something encouraging and helpful. So let's just jump into maybe the something that we're all going to experience, whether, and my understanding at this point, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that no matter what you are doing this year, if you're sending your kids to school or doing virtual learning, or of course homeschooling, there's going to be at least three, if LISD, let's talk about kind of the Louisville, is that there's going to be at least 3 or 4 weeks, possibly more, where there is going to be a mandatory at-home component. Is that what you're understanding as well? Okay. And I'm just being told, like everything else, just kind of keep your expectations, whatever, stay open-handed. So I imagine for a lot of folks, there's a lot of anxiety and maybe even outright fear about, like, okay, what do I do? What to expect? I'm reminded that lots of teachers have, master's degrees in this thing. So it's not just something you just like wake up one morning and do. So why don't you just talk about some of those broad concerns that we're probably all experiencing right now, maybe how you've experienced those and what's helped you?
Broad concerns. So one big concern that I have with my kids being, they're going to be online or doing the remote learning is what they're calling it, is being on the device all day. So that is a concern for me, that they're going to be looking at that the whole time. So the way I'm choosing to deal with that, I saw that they put in breaks during the day. So when there's a break, we're going to be no technology. So go outside, go run around the block, go walk the dog. Something where you're not still staring at the screen the entire time. That's actually one of my largest concerns.
Yeah. So I guess I can address maybe more of the homeschool aspect. So maybe some of you guys have chosen that this is your first year and you decided you want to homeschool that instead of dealing with the virtual learning and trying to figure all that out. But you feel ill-equipped or ill-prepared. I know I was in those shoes when we first moved to Zambia, Africa, to be missionaries. There wasn't an option to send my children to school. And I was around all these seeming super moms who had 4 kids and seemed like they cooked all the meals and their children were brilliant and just well-rounded and creative and awesome. And I was like, I'm never going to be able to do this. I felt it was very intimidating, I think, for me at the very beginning. And really, so again, this is speaking more towards a first-time homeschool mom. I really tried to create like public school, but in my house. And that really did not serve me well the first probably 2 years that I did it. And so I would.
And so what does that mean? What like when you say public school in your house, what does that?
Yep. So in my eyes, I was like, I've just basically got to replicate what they're doing in public school, but just take that and apply it at home. And if you decide to go the homeschool route, again, everyone has different needs. Every kid needs something different. But for us, it just wasn't an option to be in public school. And so, and my mom was a school teacher, so I just felt this pressure of like, I have to now magically have a teacher degree and do the teacher thing like they would have if they were in America in a regular school. And so that meant, like all the subjects. Like I think we had 8 subjects when we very first started, we did school all day long and just basically were slaves to a schedule, but weren't having any joy in our learning. And so I've learned over time, number one, that even though I'm not necessarily a trained teacher, I am one of the best teachers for my children. God designed me to be their mom / teacher in life. So I just kind of translated maybe, my mom hat into teacher hat. But like, again, you are designed. I want to encourage you that God gave you the children that you have, and you are specially equipped, and he equips you every day to help them navigate life in whatever season you find yourself. So for us, it was in Africa. I didn't have the option to send them somewhere. Or Riley, it was the first one that I started with, my oldest, who's in 6th grade now. And I never thought homeschool was going to be my path. That wasn't in my visions of, growing my children. Again, my mom was a public school teacher, so I just always assumed they would go to school. And so I think just understanding that I don't have to be perfect at it, but I got to wake up every day with a good attitude and trust that God's given me what I need to give my kids what they need. And then 2, just kind of letting go of this idea of what I think it should be, and just focusing on what they need in the moment. And
well, every day starts new. So even if you had a horrible day the day before,
we had lots of those at the beginning.
you spend a lot of time in prayer that night, and you start again the next day. And no kid's education was ruined in one bad day. So each day you just try again and try something different. And also what Ashley was saying with the homeschooling, this also works in some other aspects too, but kids are all different, totally different. And so even amongst my 4 kids, the way I homeschooled the first one is not how I worked with the second one. So each one, you try different things and be flexible in flexibility while still being structured. It's
Right.
Yeah. But like Riley is a kinetic learner. She likes to move while she learns. And I did not know that about her at the beginning. And this child, like I had a desk for her to sit at, and like I wanted her to sit but that just wasn't how she learned. And so finally, again, I adapted. Instead of trying to fight against that, and make her sit still, I put bungee cords around the bottom of her chair so she could move in movement while she was sitting at her desk. But I also tried to come up with ways for her to move throughout her lessons, so that like spelling or whatever, I would put words on the floor and she would have to go hop to do sight words, or I don't know. You just embrace the kind of learner your kid is.
I have a child that will remain unnamed. This child would not finish their work. They would just sit all day in the chair until I realized this person is super competitive. So all I did is hand her a stopwatch. She wasn't even timing. Again, I didn't give her time, nothing, but she would just time herself, and suddenly everything got done super fast. And she would write the times at the top of the paper for no reason. She did it, but that worked for her, not for the others, but that's what worked for her.
Yeah. Well, it's and kind of a theme here I'm hearing is giving yourselves room and even grace, we would say, both as a teacher, but also for the students / children that you are teaching. And that seems to be a big thing, because again, a lot of us, I think a lot of us have this picture of well, I must then reproduce the public school model, whatever model I inherited. I must do this at this time, and this way it needs to look this way. And really, maybe it's giving ourselves a little bit longer of a leash. And again, realizing there's going to be bad days and some good days, and Portia, to your point, one bad day or let's be honest, maybe a string of bad days is not going to ruin your child. They're not going to all of a sudden, because I do think that's a big anxiety, at least that we have with our kids right now. Is Jack, our oldest, is in school right now. Are we going to screw him up for life? Is he not now be able to get to college because we failed somehow as parents and as teachers, right? And so again, that's kind of what I'm just hearing there. And again, I think that's a common anxiety, something that we're experiencing on our side right now, of just oh my goodness, are we going to ruin everything?
And also know everyone's in the same boat right now. So if your child is,
so all of our kids will be collectively slow.
What happened generation. Oh, COVID,
Oh, like, oh yeah, they're the COVID kids. Yeah, they don't know how to do. They don't know how to spell or know how photosynthesis works or anything like that.
Their
Yeah.
parents had to raise them for some time,
Right. Well, so along this line of just kind of just broad concerns and challenges, is what are some ways that you have learned? This is going to sound terrible, but how have you learned to be with your kids with lots of time in close proximity? Like, and that's just right or wrong. It's usually not what most of us do. So how do you do that and maintain relationships with your kids and your sanity?
Okay, I already mentioned this a little bit, but I send my kids outside. Like, go outside. And if they're too little, go to the backyard. But if they're big enough, go out. But you need to get away. Everyone needs a little bit of a break. So my kids spend time outside.
Yeah. So your solution to being around your kids is to get away from your kids.
Yeah. Sometimes you have to take a break. You have to take a mental break.
I think to that point though, you need to find something like, so for me, like, so when COVID happened and we were like, I'm used to being around my kids because we've been homeschooling a while, right? But whenever COVID happened, that's like a whole nother level of being around your kids. And so I'm imagining some of these parents where this is their whole other level because they're not used to it, right? So I found something that really fed me that I do. So I walked into yoga. I've never been like a workout kind of person, but I found a holy yoga. So it's really doing that intentional, like setting my mind right at the beginning of the day. And that is protected space for me. My kids know that my yoga time, and it may just be 20 minutes or 30 minutes a day, but that is mama's time. And y'all will find something else to do.
They usually do our math.
And they usually do their math, or they have other movement activities that I have. Go Noodle is a great resource, by the way, just a little
And also
Cosmic Kid yoga. Yep. She's over here offering suggestions of movement.
We're writing them down.
But no, really, just doing something that really centers yourself. I really would recommend, like in the morning, to really get with Jesus and just be like, give me grace for this day. Give me patience for this day. Because like Portia said, you have to wake up every day. And so much of everything is driven by the parent's attitude. So I find if my attitude stinks, their attitude is going to stink. If I'm feeling stressed out about the day, they're going to feel stressed out about the day. And so if I can start the day in a good place, I find that I have more patience and more grace for them and more grace for myself. And I don't know, I would find something that fills you so that you can in turn fill your kids.
Sure.
And I would also say, just do one thing at a time. Like, it gets overwhelming when you're trying to think through the whole year or the whole, then that's so much, I can't do it. But just each day, just take each day. And today I can do this and that and do it. And then you'll find yourself making it through without that overwhelming feeling, because it's going to happen anyway.
Yeah,
right.
Whether you're afraid or not.
Yeah. Well, and on the positive side, so with again, knowing that there's gonna be some component of this for everyone, what are some of the positives that have just something that you really have been appreciative doing a more of like an at-home type of a learning environment? So what are the positives that you've experienced that maybe that people can look forward to as they move into this?
Time with my kids is a big one for me, and that was a huge reason we homeschooled in the beginning. I personally just wasn't ready to send them to kindergarten. Like, I wanted more time with them. So yeah, I always love extra time with them.
Yeah. I feel like you get to know your kids in a different way than you would know them otherwise. Again, when you're kind of learning about their learning styles, you're kind of starting to see, like, I don't know, I feel like I can kind of start to see, and they have a lot of growing and changing to do, but like, I get a front row seat to the things that they're interested in, the things that they're passionate about, the things that, I don't know, spark them. And it's really fun, I think, in my opinion, to just figure out what those things are. And I just feel like I get to know my kids in a deeper way. And so that helps me, I feel like, be a better mom, because I know what they need, I can better provide that, or I don't know, just get to know your kids better.
Yeah. Well, that's something that, and again, all of us are going to be doing, at least I think, maybe private schools are different, but at least for a public schools, even if they're going to be going, it is a cool thing for maybe a month or so. It's just an opportunity to get a little bit of a unique insight. And even if it's just that, I think that's also a really cool aspect and a big benefit. So I think those are really good. So what I wanted to do though now is maybe start talking, kind of getting more into the weeds here. And I think more of this is becoming clearer as every day goes on, but just help us walk through again, the difference between homeschooling, virtual learning. I think even when we were having initial conversations, I'm like, yeah, just talk to us about, you know, doing school at home. You're like, well, wait, it's different. I'm like, oh, okay. That's so, and I imagine many people are getting more acquainted with this idea, but just walk us through the big changes and the big differences between virtual learning and homeschooling. And well, just take it away.
Can we go virtual learning
Go
first?
for it.
Okay, so you will not have the flexibility that you have with homeschooling in virtual learning. They've already given us the schedule, and they're going to be doing this at certain times and that at certain times, and so the kids are going to be required to do that. So in that aspect, you won't have the flexibility.
So virtual learning is basically you're taking the school schedule. You're kind of just doing what they would otherwise do virtually / at home.
There's virtual learning, which is the all year, and then there's the remote learning, which is just the kids who are going until they go back to school.
Gotcha.
So yes, you're following their schedule, and their teachers are telling you what to do. So I mean, the good part of that is you don't have to plan curriculum. Done. You just have to kind of go along with what the teacher says. I would say on that, like, and this is me personally, but I try to foster an independence in my kids in learning. Even in homeschooling, I try to. And so I'm planning to not hover, like give them their space, let them, and then if the teacher says, hey, there's a problem, then I'm gonna, step in and start watching, but gonna try to let them take ownership of that a little bit, while still watching, but letting them, have a little ownership on it. Yeah.
Yeah. So what age do you think they can start doing it? Because again, we have going into first grade, so what age do you think that's appropriate to give them some more of the reins versus, again, is it one of those things where do I need to just sit there with them all day and press buttons for it? So what do you think is like maybe that transition period?
So it's probably going to depend on the child. Elementary age, so I have a 4th grader, and he's been homeschooled up until this point, so this is going to be different for him. But I'm going to try to let him do it on his own and see how it goes. So I would say under 4th grade probably starts to get kind of hard to totally let them do it themselves. But in the spring, I had a 5th grader who he did everything himself. So I didn't have to, but he's kind of that kind of kid. So you also need to know your child.
Mm-hmm.
And I can imagine, so for like the younger elementary grades, like maybe even creating, because I do think that giving them some independence gives them that kind of level of confidence. Mm-hmm. And so even if like you get the schedule and you create something, with pictures, if they're not readers yet, or if they're, not strong readers, or even just basic word check things. Because there's something, I don't know, I like a good checkbox. Maybe that's just me, but I feel like my kids also enjoy like being able to, so like I've developed a new one this year. I haven't introduced it to the kids yet, but this is just in our homeschool, but like having kind of like Riley's responsibilities. These are the things that she's responsible for today. And there are things that like we do together, but then there's
like from learning responsibilities.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So like say, Jack has, or, has certain classes at certain times or whatever. So you could incorporate time telling and like knowing your schedule. And I mean, you're obviously going to have to kind of come behind and make sure, depending on how good they are at that. But I think that it's possible to create something that, gives them a little bit more independence. So it's a little upfront work for you, but then I think you can kind of start to hand that off. And as they get more used to it, depending again, if they're just doing the 3 or 4 weeks, maybe they won't get, as used to it. But if you're doing it the whole year, then I don't know, it really does build confidence that like, I did this all by myself, or, I finished math, look at this, or.
So even the process of the day, you bring them into that, and that in itself is learning. That's, I mean, again, we all have to do that today. Like, what's on my calendar? What do I need to do?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's preparing them for, because I feel like the more and more we learn, like leaning toward less of rigid schedules and work, and more of like, you need to create time for these responsibilities. This is what's on the agenda for today, and however quickly you get it done, So I think it is a good,
And I think
preparation
step
skill.
into it in the beginning, expecting them to do it. Don't hover first and then try to back off. That won't work. So go in saying, hey, you're going to do this. And then if it's not working, you can step in. But if you set the expectation that I don't really think you can do it, then they think, I can't really do it. And then they will need you.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
your attitude and confidence about them will make them feel more confident.
Right.
So don't be afraid to be like, you got this. Like, we're going to learn some really cool stuff this year, and even tell them about what they're learning and how it's going to help them.
Right.
So.
And so I have a quick question, and this is kind of on the, and I know all of this is changing so much. So at the end of last year, coming into, what is that called, spring? Yeah, spring of last year, we were with the shutdown, right? We had to do a round of this type of stuff. Do we have any sense right now about how similar spring or fall will be to last spring? Do we think that it'll be, because that's one thing that
We've
people
been
have.
told it's going to be totally different.
Totally different. Okay.
We don't know. But in the spring, it was get this done. And it was just a list of things mostly.
Right.
We had a few like Zoom meetings or WebEx, what they use. But they're saying, no, they're going to be on in class each day this time.
Yeah.
Okay. So really this is, at least for all of us, yeah, we're kind of all starting on the same, at least for the virtual learners and maybe even remote learners, we're kind of at all in the same place. I don't want to say square one, but we're all in the same place, and it's going to be a kind of a process of discovery this year.
And I'm sure for the teachers too, they haven't done this.
Yeah, I was about
Right.
to say, our roommate is a teacher, so she's been the last 2 weeks really going in, trying to figure out what this is going to look like, and it's all new to them too. So I would really encourage y'all to offer a lot of grace towards your teachers,
Right.
because this is brand new. They are having to learn how to teach in a whole new way. And
There's that theme. The theme again of grace comes up
so,
for ourselves, for the kids. For
I think they're
teachers.
trying to get answers, and there's not answers given yet because everyone's figuring it out. So
Right.
I think, yeah, this beginning part, I think what you said, just like, don't stress out. Your kid's not going to get broken in 6 months. Even if it's a whole year and it's a disaster year, like, they're going to be okay. And they'll learn other things, about life and how to be flexible and how to give grace. And
Okay. So let's kind of talk about homeschooling as well. So here's the one thing that has crossed my mind. And again, we're not trying to advocate one or the other, but we're trying to understand what are some of the benefits of each approach. Obviously, I think the benefits of the in-person regular school or even virtual is you have the backup of a teacher, presumably who's available by email, web, whatever. So you've got that as a resource. But one of the things that has struck me is that, okay, there are families and situations that are just non-standard, non-traditional. Maybe it's a single parent household, dual work situation, whatever it might be. And so I'm just gonna say this based on our conversations, is that it does seem though that the homeschool option could be at least a consideration, because it gives some other flexibility. And so again, not trying to advocate for homeschool, but frankly, one of the benefits of homeschool seems to be the flexibility and the self-paced. So why don't you just share your experiences about that, about whether that's been true, and then maybe some resources that you have used with curriculums or ways that you've just done that, in case as people are just trying to look at this like, whoa, something's got to give here. I'm not ready to send my kid for some reason. I've said enough. Speak to that, and I'd love to get your perspectives.
yeah, okay. So let's see. There's so many things I could say about that, because whenever I very first started, again, I was just brand new, had no idea, and I had all these moms around me who seemed like they just knew how to teach their kids, and I did not know that at all. That's a learning curve. That's something that only comes through experience. So when we first started, we used a curriculum that was like all encompassing. It sent me everything down to, like, they actually had video teachers. So I wasn't even the teacher, I was the facilitator. It had like all the worksheets, all the tests, all the answer, like everything. It was basically like, here's your school year in a box. And I think I really needed that at the beginning as I was learning how Riley learns. Now with more experience, because I think especially first time homeschool moms, they get really intimidated, or they just they don't know where to start. And so maybe like a big box that just has everything is the great way to start. And that way you at least have some place a direction to go. And then as you realize how your kid learns and what things they're interested in or not interested in, like you can really start making decisions about the curriculum. Because now having a 6th grader, this is actually the most excited I've been about the school year. I've chosen a lot of different pieces. And that's one of the things with homeschool that's really cool, is that you have a lot of say-so in what your kid learns. So, I mean, I pull off like the Texas requirements of, 6th grade, so I can make sure that she's learning the things, so that way at least I have a guide of what they're learning in the public schools. And I actually have a choice of whether we cover all of those things or in what frequency or what, how much time we spend on different things, depending on how important they are to me. And I think that's one of for me, the highest benefits is that I have a really big say-so in how we spend our time. And so, I can incorporate Bible, and I've really gotten to the place where I have pretty much like 3 main subjects that we kind of launch off of to incorporate the other subjects. So like we have history and math, and then computer. So within my history, we do a lot of reading and writing. Math, obviously there's math, but then there's lots of life skill application, whether it's baking or budgeting at the grocery store, or, there's so many ways that you can teach that practically. And then with the computer, we can kind of piece all of those things into the computer. So we can do projects on Google Docs. Riley writes stories and she uses Google Docs, and she has to email them to me and send them to me. So she's learning that technology piece. And there's a lot of really cool free resources out there for the little add-ons. We added coding this year because I've heard that's things kids should do.
I love coding.
And I know nothing about it. I'm like the worst at technology. So that's the piece that I'm really working on right now. My Sailor Girl approves of the coding website.
There we go.
And I wanted to say that a lot of people don't know about the TEA website, which is Texas Education Agency. They have something, it's called the TEAKS, Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills. And it's listed by grade, by subject, everything they should learn. Well, they will learn in a public school. Well, they're supposed to learn in a public school setting. So that kind of helps you to feel like, okay, my kids learned everything they needed to. I can look through this list. Yep, we did it. Just gives you some peace, I think, and knowing you did it.
Again, idiot question here. Is it like by the time they're 6th grade, they should know all of basic Texas history, or what would be
what they're going to learn that year.
Things?
It's what they have to learn that year. The teachers use it to make sure that they did each thing that is required. So it's kind of the basics, but it's what they were supposed to learn.
And so what's an example of something they're supposed to learn, say, in 4th grade?
I haven't looked at it.
Well, okay, so for
okay.
6th grade. So Riley is in 6th grade. And so like I looked at the science, because science is not something that I have a strong suit in, right? But it gives you, so there's basically five units that I've broken it into of what they would be learning in like public school. So our first unit is on like the earth. So we're doing plate tectonics and volcanoes, erosion. Sure. So it just kind of gives you like an outline, if you will, of these are the topics to cover. And so that way, that kind of helps you choose what curriculum, if you don't have like an all-encompassing box curriculum. So for example, for our science this year, we're using Brain Pop. Awesome. They have all kinds of videos over all kinds of subjects. We're specifically using it for science, and you can go on watch videos. They have quizzes, and that one is a subscription that you do, like a yearly subscription. And I've actually paired with another homeschool mom, so we share the cost. So we each have a login, and we get together for science, which makes it a lot more fun because then we have more kids around. And I know that may be taboo in the COVID season, but you know.
Sure, it's a bubble. You've established a bubble.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, so and Portia, you were shaking your head there. Do you have anything, or like not shaking your head, but like shaking your head? You're like, that's terrible. But, do you have any other thoughts on some of what we've been covering there?
Well, so there is a homeschool store in Louisville. Some people find it overwhelming. I'm a curriculum junkie, so I mean, like, it makes me want to teach them when I go in. I just like, but you go in and it's just I mean, they have so many kinds. So you could pick and choose. That's a place you could find resource to pick and choose what you wanted to teach them. It has everything.
So
I will say, as a first-time homeschool mom, the very first time I went to that store, I about had a heart attack. It did not serve me well at all until, like I said, I had about 3 years under my belt. It was just like, I don't know what I'm doing in here. There's way too many options. So I mean, be careful with that. Yeah, it's great resources, and now like.
But just be warned. I mean, again, it can feel overwhelming. Yeah.
It can be overwhelming.
But you can do it.
Yeah. It's so awesome.
So here's one thing, and this is something that from my experience, when I was homeschooling, that was a resource that we used. I'd be curious if you have any thoughts on this. We had a homeschooling, I think you would call them a co-op, where we had our core curriculum and our core things that we would do at home, but then I don't know, a few times a week, whatever it was, we would go to this co-op, and we would have, and back in those days, if I may say so, because I'm so old, you know, we had a computer lab because there was no iPads or anything. And there was some, you know, art classes. And then even we had opportunities to do things like sports and intramural activities. And so you had that on probably for two reasons, because some of those things are a little more specialized. And then probably the socialization aspect. And I know that's one of those big common things like, well, if you homeschool, your kid's going to not know how to, you know, make friends. And, you know, which again, having gone to private school and homeschool, I think, you know, the best argument for one is the other. You know, it's like, you know, there's some weird public school kids, there's some weird homeschool kids. Like, hey, but have you used those tools? Have you found those helpful or not?
I was a part of a co-op for the past 7 years, but that ended when my kids quit. But I loved it. So ours was on Friday. It was when you talk about having that break, a little bit of a break for me because, well, I used to teach high school math, so I could still do that. I taught the math classes, some of the math classes there for high school. And my kids went to other people who were excited about, you know, elementary reading, which not me. So yeah, I loved it. I loved that.
Yeah. And I actually went and checked out this thing co-op, and again, awesome. And for, you know, people and parents that want to incorporate some of those extracurriculars or things that they don't feel as strong at, like co-ops are fantastic because you do get moms with different skill sets and you kind of work together to teach the kids, you know, a lot of different things. And so that was really cool. For us, it just didn't work out because the flexibility wasn't there, you know.
Sure.
And one of the reasons that I enjoyed the homeschool. So I think whatever you choose, again, you kind of know what your kids need. And so if you're needing to be out of the house or you're needing more socialization, like I feel like the way that we've structured it, we aren't doing a co-op necessarily, but we are I've got like 4 families that we do different subjects kind of together-ish, but it's very loose and very flexible. And I feel like between us, we have like, I don't know, 20 kids, probably not that many, but when we have a lot, so we got the socialization aspect, I'm not as worried about. But yeah, it's just great that is out there. I would highly encourage whatever kind you're doing to try to have some kind of community.
Right.
A mom, whether it's one mom that is also virtual learning with their kid, or if you're homeschooling another homeschool family that maybe has been doing it for a year or 2 or 3, that you could just kind of like, I have one that's her first year and she asked if I would walk with her this year. And I was like, yeah, great. Yeah. And so she comes and we don't have necessarily, she's coming every single day, but she has the freedom to if she wants. And
so
I think most homeschool moms would be open to, they remember that first year.
So even before COVID, homeschooling has gotten, you know, changed so much over the few years, but there's all kinds of groups. The one I was a part of was very structured and kind of what you were talking about, Kyle, maybe a little old school in that way. But there's a lot of them that just meet at the park for park days, or they just go to museums, or, you know, they have field trips sort of things. So, and there's a lot of those in this area. So you can kind of choose something that works for you.
Yeah. Okay. So kind of coming back full circle here again, you know, we realize there are no perfect options here right now, especially now that there's going to be some compromises. But again, any broad encouragement that you would give to families who are just feeling like, wow, which way is up this year? Anything you'd want to say to a mom or a dad who's struggling, who's feeling frustrated, anxious, things of that nature?
Prayer, lots of prayer makes everything better. So I spend a lot of time, before school starts, praying specifically for each kid, and how I hope that things will go for them that year, or for God to lead me to help them do whatever it is that they want to do, and that helps us.
Yeah. And I would say just the overarching theme seems to have been this whole conversation, just offering lots of grace. Grace for yourself each and every day. Because there was a point in time where it was really hard, and you just got to wake up every day again, and your attitude can be everything, and you got to let go of the day before and just start a new day, and give your kids permission to start a new day. I would say I've learned that it's the hardest thing to teach your own, like you have the least amount of patience, or it's the hardest thing to teach your own kid, because you're most invested in them doing well. Like I have all the patience in the world for everyone else's children. And I'm like, like even just noticing in our little homeschool group or whatever, like I have lots of patience for other people's kids, but because they're your kids, you are heavily invested that they do well. So I think just remembering to offer that same grace, to let them mess up and it not be the end of the world, and just to always, I think, have a teaching heart, that what are they going to learn in this moment? And so maybe that's, I exploded, and then I came back and I apologized, and I said, you know what, this is hard for mom too. I think there's lots of opportunities that I give my kids to practice grace for me. And don't be afraid to say, man, I messed that situation up, and I'm sorry. And I'm going to do better next time. I'm going to ask Jesus, and I invite Jesus into lots of our conversations. Jesus, please just come in here, give me extra patience, give Riley extra grace for me. So I think those kind of conversations are really, really sweet and special. They see you vulnerable, and that's okay. You don't have to be perfect.
I love it. All right. This has been awesome. I appreciate you taking the time. But how about this? First, you mentioned prayer. How about this? I'm just going to pray for our audience, for everyone here, and then maybe we can all agree together, and then we'll wrap up. But thank you so much for taking the time and just sharing what your experiences have been. Again, we don't have all the answers, but hey, we'll share what we know, and maybe that'll be helpful to some folks. So let's go ahead and pray, and then we'll wrap up. God, we thank you for today. We want to just pray for all of our families right now who are in just a time of change and transition. We know that each of these opportunities that we've talked about today, God, we know there's nothing perfect, and we know there's no perfect solution. So we do ask that you just help us to be gracious in this area, particularly of how we are parenting and how we are teaching and sending our kids into learning environments. So God, for those of us who are going to be virtual learning, and that's a new step, would you just give us great confidence, knowing that it's not about us, it's about ultimately showing the love of Jesus to our children, and loving them and teaching them the best we know how, knowing that you're going to fill in the gaps. God, for those of us who are preparing to send our kids into public school environments, God, would you also give us tons of grace, knowing that our administrators and teachers and our extended learning team, or we're all learning, and we're all going to make mistakes. So just give us a great deal of patience and grace for them. And for homeschooling, again, for those of us who are going to be choosing to go in maybe a radically different direction that we weren't planning on, would you just give us also a lot of confidence, knowing that you're leading us and guiding us, give us wisdom, help us to press into your power and your spirit, of course, but also to take advantage of community and the resources that we have together that we can share. And so we thank you again for all of these things. And it's in Jesus' name we said, amen.
Amen.
All right. Well, thank you, ladies. And again, thank you all for tuning in. We hope this has been helpful. Again, we want to encourage you to stay tuned. We're going to be continuing to do resources like these on schools like schooling or subjects like schooling and a whole bunch of other topics. So we hope that you tune in as well. So God bless all of you, and we'll see you very soon. Bye.